Welcome to Sekou Style. This is your man Sekou Kesley. Again, if you're new to this video or this channel, please make sure you subscribe or you like the video plus subscribe anyway. Listen, today we're going to be talking about none other but coup d'etat. Now, before we log into the video, what is coup d'etat, right? That's what I always want to know. What is coup d'etat? So, coup d'etat in the layman term, meaning like for everybody to just understand basically, is when military leaders or military decide to take over a democratically elected government or a government. So that's coup d'etat. Coup d'etat in Africa. And we are saying that as of recent, there has been a lot of coup happening, and starting from Mali, Guinea, Burkina Faso, Chad, Guinea-Bissau coup attempt, Sudan, and I mean, you can name it. So I just want to really quickly talk about this, where we are seeing resurgence of coup d'etats happening around Africa, and what are some of the root causes of this coup? I mean, obviously there are like a lot of straight out off the bat, a lot of root causes of the coup that people know of, and you don't have to be a political scientist to really know what are causing this, or you don't have to be a doctor, a student, or researchers to know what's really happening. But there are also some things that are seem very obvious that are out there, but people really don't know what are some of the causes, what's happening. Before you know it, there's a coup here, there's a coup there. We want to talk. Let's talk. And what are this coup? Is it good for Africa as it is, or where are we going with this? And this is why I really want to talk about a little. I know it's been a little while, so let's get down to it, right? Now, really, from what I observed, many of the countries, at least a couple of countries that you see the coup happening, one thing that, across the board that stood up to me is the lack of leadership. That's number one reason that, that is causing many of these coups. When I say lack of leadership, this is what I mean. The leader, either like in the case of Guinea, have lost some kind of legitimacy. Alpha Conde, when the coup happened, he was then, people didn't see him, at least the opposition, the international community. He was losing a lot of legitimacy in the country to be seen as the legitimate leader of the people of Guinea, because he did a constitutional coup. So he has lost that relevancy as a leader. In Mali, it was something, where people were kind of getting tired of the leader because he wasn't seen as someone who was tough on instability, someone who was tough, decision making and stuff like that. So you see the same thing in all the region, like Sudan, the leadership wasn't there, meaning people were losing trust and confidence in their leadership. So there becomes lack of leadership. Now, another place to use, another reason for this coup being what it is and what's happening so frequently is insecurity. And that also tend to come from the lack of leadership, because when people don't feel the presence of leaders, the country becomes almost little lawless. The rule of law becomes almost selectively applied to certain people. The rule of law is not applied at all in some instances. In some instances, you see these terrorist group or these organized criminals working to undermine the state. And you see them successfully gaining ground, and people become scared, okay, what's going on? Do we have a government or not? And this insecurity, people don't want to invest anymore. International partners are leaving, kidnappings happening, people are being killed. A lot of stuff that people are afraid of start happening. And, that insecurity leads also to the military saying, hey, let's come and take over and bring order. Classic example of that, Burkina Faso, Sudan, and Guinea-Bissau. That's a narco state. But again, that's another thing where people feel like they are not secure, so the drug laws are coming to try to take over the military. It's like, okay, we have to take over to fight these drug laws, and back and forth. That's in the case of Guinea-Bissau, but that's still happening, and there's a lot to be discussed on that. But nonetheless, you see that insecurity brings about coup. Another reason is corruption and mismanagement. I mean, this go without saying, but corruption and mismanagement, I bring them together as one because, obviously when there's corruption, what happened? Or at least when they perceive of corruption, is like people view also mismanagement happening a lot. And when corrupt official takes the money, where they put it, whatever they use, they take the country resources that are supposed to be for the country, they take it and mismanage it. Again, and you see all these things are almost together. Lack of leadership brings about real corruption, because if people are like the leader, they don't trust the leader, or they don't believe that the leader could stand for something, and they don't see any way that the leader could penalize them for being corrupt, they will be more corrupt. And if they see that the leader is also part of being corrupted, they all gonna do what? Eat what they can, as long as it could last. And what happened? The citizenry becomes what? Disenfranchised, and they don't even want to participate in the government anymore. They don't care about what's going on. They don't care if the military could come and take over and just call it a day. People will move by their businesses, and things will just move on as it is. So again, that corruption and mismanagement is one of the major reasons that coups are really happening right now. I'm just going to be quick at trying to give you all the the juice. But another reason also, and this is like the elephant in the room, a lot of people don't talk about it, but we all know it. This is the international aid regime. Again, when you look at it, you think international aid, most of these international institutions, they mean well, they're coming here, they want to help our people. But sometimes they end up doing what? Undermining the democratically elected leaders because of their interference in the government, in the nation. So, they make the government seem like they don't know what they're doing, or the governors, or those who are governing the people, the leaders, make them seem like they don't know what they're doing, and so they kind of like, whether directly or indirectly, undermine the governing systems. People start believing like, okay, if these international institutions are not in favor of government, that means the government is not a reputable government. The government is bad, is doing something that is bad. And these international institutions also use that to their advantage. Like, okay, we're gonna, put these letters or these stuff out there to undermine the government. So the government is trying to balance, okay, we are doing this so that we can get this aid, or because we need this money, we have to do X, Y, and Z by this international standard. And that also could be another factor. Like, let's say you have to do this project, or you have to take these kind of measures. You have to cut salaries, you have to do this, you have to do that in order for us to give you aid. Now, when you do those things, the people are already stranded and they don't have enough money, you're cutting their salary, the people, they revolt. People are dissatisfied. When people are dissatisfied, what happened? The military steps in again and undermine the entire governing system and take over. The coup happens. Now, let me talk about the real elephant in the room, which is when it comes to African democracy, as we are right now, is the militarization of Africa, especially done by the United States mainly, but we see countries like Russia and other countries coming in, with private military. The United States is doing it with the United States military training. And the training here, and this is the ironic part, the training here is supposed to be to train African troops so that they could fight the war against terrorism, global terrorism, which in ideal, it sounds good. But then what happened is, I'm not saying here, and some scholars or some spectators or some people will say, or experts, some experts will say that the U.S. knowingly trained some of these officials so that they could go take over their government as coup d'etat leaders. I don't think that's the case, honestly. I think what happened is most of these leaders, the military leaders, they already know that getting this training from the United States put them at a different level. Many of them are smart guys coup, they received some of the best of trainings. When they get the best of training, now they feel like, okay, we are in position, and they have some ambition. They wanted to go take over their country. They use the experience that they have from the United States training and all these things. Because when you look at, almost all the military coup leaders who have done coup right now, as of recent, they all have some form of training either from the United States or France. These people who are involved in Africa, especially Western country, they all have these kind of connection with them, from Mali to Guinea to Sudan. All these guys have been exposed to the US military training, or the French, or some other Western power. So the question becomes, what is the US military doing in Africa? Is it that's the reason, that's some of the reason is these new regime that are being set up, is they in connection with the US or the French, so that they could represent their interests instead of the interest of the people? I don't know. This could be something for us to see. It's still in the happening, right? Some people would say no. These guys are smart guys who took this training. They found there's a need to help their people. They're using the training, all the stuff that they got to help their people. Some will want to believe that. Some will want to say no, it's the colonial power, the US coming back and saying, okay, we need to get ourselves involved here. These people represent our interests. These former presidents who were there, they were not listening to us anymore, so we need fresh blood, and so these coups are happening. Some people would say that, but what I think is it's still in the making, where we still have to follow up and see what's really happening. But my advice to some of these coup makers, or the military leaders who are taking over this country, is really to listen to the people, to make sure that whatever decision you are making is in favor of the people. I mean, this is sadly, I'm not in support of coup, but also if it's necessary, it's necessary. Like right now, some of these countries, I feel like the coup were necessary. And now, how they're gonna take the power to serve the people, now that becomes a whole different ballgame. Now we are hoping that now, at least for me, I'm hoping that this become that little silver lining where you see these military leaders actually taking the power and changing it around to solve the problem of the people, and laying foundation that now after this there will be no coup, or even if there's a coup, there will be no coup, period. So we are putting in place a system so that our people will benefit from it years to come. Now, some of the things that makes this insecurity in Africa, especially those regions, the Sahel region, in Burkina Faso and all those regions, make the region insecure. I have a whole stuff that we could discuss on that, but I will leave that. And I think the West really did contribute and continue to contribute, knowingly or and not knowingly, making that place insecure. But that's a whole different topic that we're going to have to talk about. But this one was just about the coup and what are the reasons, or some of the core reasons behind it. And the core reason, if you're just joining us, the core reasons are, again, lack of trustworthy leadership, insecurity, 2, corruption and economic mismanagement, undermining by the international institution, especially with aid, and then militarization of Africa. I think those are 5 reasons that these coups, you see them happening. Yes, we do have local clemesh here and there, but usually when you see the local, like when it comes to the local tension, before, when we used to see those coups, what ended up happening is, when the coup happens, what happens? You see a civil war. But these guys are so now organized. These new coup leaders, they are so organized and so well trained and so professional. After a coup, you barely hear of any civil war. People are actually in the street jubilating. I mean, appreciating them for coming and saving them and all that stuff. It's like, I mean, that is a silver lining for me. It's like, okay, people, at least we're not killing each other like dogs, or like it used to be before. When you see other coups, like in the 90s, in the 80s, there will be a bloody coup. Right now, you see a lot of bloodless coup, like, bloodless coup. those people, you know, that's a whole different discussion. But you see that the coups are happening, but the people come in the street and jubilate, and then these guys are putting system in place, or at least seem like they know what they're doing. So if that continues, it's not really that bad, but we don't want the coup to continue. We don't want coups to keep happening, right? Because we have to give chance to democracy, or we have to redefine what African democracy is. You know, what it means to be democratic in African context. I guess when we really realize what that means, and this, it will be best for us to put in place mechanism. If it means the military will be leading, or the military will be part of that democratic process in putting people in, or whatever, putting a transition council or council of leaders, or whatever that means to us, we need to start figuring that out so that our continent could be free, where we, instead of focusing on, we don't know when the coup gonna happen, we should be focused on how we're gonna develop ourselves, how the next generation Africans gonna be able to see a better future. This is just a little hint that I wanted to make before. But hey man, if you're new to this channel, please subscribe, like and subscribe. Make sure you stay tuned, share my videos. It was nice talking to you. Peace and love. See you on the next video. Peace.